So there's an awful lot of really, really great stuff on the internet that you can learn about various aspects of aviation, but there's also a lot of really bad stuff. Stuff that's just highly inaccurate. And it's always centered on the most controversial subjects like traffic patterns at an uncontrolled airport or communications. And one of the ones I like to talk about a lot is the impossible turn. Well, the impossible turn, that's the situation you find yourself in on departure and you have an engine failure, and what are you going to do? Well, if you follow conventional wisdom, you're below 1,000 feet, you're going to go straight ahead, turn 30 degrees left or right. That's what is taught at almost every flight school. It's what's on the internet. I was at a 99s meeting and that's what they were advocating. The problem with that is if you're, and that might work just fine if you're coming out of a quiet little country airport in South Carolina or Kansas or Texas, but what if you're coming out of Lantana in Palm Beach County, or any urban small airport that doesn't give you a good option to land straight ahead? So the impossible turn all of a sudden becomes a viable option. But when is that an option, and when should you consider it? Well, it's not impossible. Actually, it is possible at some point on every departure in every aircraft. And it's not black magic or mystic science. It's math. And I published an article called The Not So Impossible Turn. It's published in a lot of places, Cessna Flyer and Piper Flyer, for example, which are two great organizations that I helped start 20-something years ago. And I use a basic training airplane in my example, which is representative of every Cherokee, every 172, every 150 that's out there that you can make the adjustments for your airplane. But realistically speaking, the impossible turn becomes possible at some point. It depends on the airport, it depends on the length of the runway, it depends on the wind. But what are your options if you don't do it? If you listen to this nonsense, don't turn below 1,000 feet. So I teach every single one of my commercial candidates the impossible turn. I show them that A, it can be done, B, that you should know when to do it, and C, I explain to them that in some aircraft, like the PC-12, for example, which I operated for a corporation out of South Carolina for a number of years, in the simulator, they teach you that if you're spring-loaded and you're ready to do it, it can be done every time, every single time. So take a look at the article, and you'll see that at some point, the impossible turn becomes possible in your aircraft. Now, what I suggest strongly is you find a competent and capable instructor who's willing to demonstrate this to you in your airplane so that you can figure out for yourself at what point you can actually turn around. But if you're coming off of a 5, 6, 7,000 foot runway into a 10-knot headwind, you're still over the airport and when you cross 500 feet. So why not turn around? Now, I'm not suggesting that you absolutely positively have to land right on the runway you just took off from, but you could land on the taxiway or the grass next to the runway or an adjacent runway or a perpendicular runway. But you'll be, especially at a towered airport, at a place where there's fire trucks and EMTs and a tower to see what happened and help. So if you don't do a great job, or if you ball up the airplanes, there's people there to help you. But when you line up at the end of the runway every single time, you need to think about at what point I can turn this thing around and put it back on the airport. It depends on a bunch of different things, and that's what the article's all about. But don't let anybody tell you that you need to do this no less than 1,000 feet. don't let anybody tell you that you need to do this above 1,000 feet, because at 1,000 feet, if you wait that long, you are so far from the airport, you may not get back to the airport. It's just bad training. And I listened to a gentleman who is an experienced Air Force aviator and airline type preach to a group of 99s where he practices this stuff at 4,000 feet. And you can tell by your altimeter if you're going to make it or not. Well, I got news for you. You can't, because 1 foot doesn't show up on an altimeter, and 1 foot is the difference between being on the runway and being in the runway. So and by the way, the sight picture is totally different. The startle factor is totally different. And there's zero value in doing this training at 4,000 feet or 3,000 feet. You're not going to learn anything. Okay, but I take my commercial guys out, and typically 500-600 feet, depending on the runway we're using and the wind, I pull the engine power back and we do the impossible turn. And as soon as they realize that not only can they make it, they can make it handily, then I explain to them the mechanics, the science, the math, and that's what that article is written about. So take a look at the article, and I'd love to hear what you have to think about it. But reality is, at some point in time, if it should happen to you, and your only choice is the impossible turn or crashing into an apartment building or landing on a highway with power lines, I would take my chances with the impossible turn every time. One additional note to this. I have personally had 4 engine failures on departure, 2 in turbine airplanes, 2 in piston airplanes. One of them was in a 600 feet in a crosswind in a Cub. And everything that I taught, everything that I teach, everything that I learned came into play every time, and it worked every time. So before you judge the conversation, realize that what I'm telling you is coming from experience, not theory.